This video is going to talk about the physical features of several regions of Asia that we have not yet discussed. Asia as a continent is located on the landmass of Eurasia. Eurasia is a landmass that contains the continents of Europe and Asia. So again, we're going to be focusing on the Asian portion. And there are several regions on the continent of Asia. There is Southwest Asia, where you see my mouse right now, and it includes Israel and Syria and the Arabian Peninsula. You also have Central Asia, the STAN one, where you have Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, where you see my mouse again. In this unit, we're going to be talking about the Indian subcontinent, which is a region in Asia, and it's where you see my mouse right now. It includes the countries of Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and Bhutan. We're also going to be talking about East Asia. East Asia, right here, includes Mongolia, China, the Koreas, Japan, and Taiwan. And then we're going to be discussing the region of Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is mainly made of islands and peninsulas, and it includes countries like Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia and the Philippines and Indonesia. All right, so all of these regions are regions on the continent of Asia, on the landmass of Eurasia. But with this unit, we're going to be talking about three of those regions: the Indian subcontinent, East Asia, and Southeast Asia. This region is surrounded quite a bit by water. We have the Arabian Sea, which borders Oman and India and Pakistan. So the Arabian Sea is pretty far to the west and pretty far to the north. All right, just south of the Arabian Sea, just south of India and Sri Lanka, we have the Indian Ocean, and it's a very, very large body of water. It is an ocean. We also have the Bay of Bengal, which borders Bangladesh, India, and other peninsula countries. All right, so we have three important bodies of water around the Indian subcontinent: the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the Bay of Bengal. Around East Asia, we have several important seas like the Yellow Sea. The Yellow Sea divides the Korean peninsula from China. We also have the Sea of Japan. The Sea of Japan divides the Japanese archipelago from the Korean peninsula, China, and Russia. And to the east of everything, we have the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean in the world, and it separates Asia from the western coast of the United States. Right in between Asia and the United States, kind of smack dab in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we have the state of Hawaii. All right, so those are the main bodies of water that you need to know about for East Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and Southwest Asia. Of course, there are other major bodies of water around, especially in Southeast Asia, like the South China Sea and the East China Sea. But those are the main ones that we're going to be focusing on. We're going to focus in on the Indian subcontinent region. The Indian subcontinent, if we take a look at this satellite image, has a lot of different physical features. The country of India itself has some low-lying regions, it has some deserts, it has some highly elevated regions, but it's all located on a subcontinent. And a subcontinent is just a large landmass that is smaller than an actual continent. And the way the Indian subcontinent works is it's located on a completely separate tectonic plate than the rest of Asia. And thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, when these plates were moving without any humans to worry about, the plate that carried the Indian subcontinent collided with the plate that carries Asia. And the Indian subcontinent joined the continent of Asia. So originally, the Indian subcontinent was completely separate. We've already talked about the Hindu Kush mountain range. The Hindu Kush mountain range is right here. It lies to the west of the Indian subcontinent. And this jagged, highly elevated mountain range separates the Indian subcontinent from Central Asia. So again, the Hindu Kush mountain range flows through Afghanistan and Pakistan and a little bit into India. The Indian subcontinent is also home to the tallest mountains in the world. The Himalayan mountains separate the Indian subcontinent from the rest of East Asia, and they are in this highlighted region in the map on the right. And the Himalayan mountains, they mainly characterize the country of Nepal. They do tuck a little bit into Bhutan, a little bit into Pakistan, a little bit into India, and they do kind of connect with the Hindu Kush mountain range. And these mountains formed when the Indian subcontinent and the continent of Asia collided. Right? So these two plates, these two land masses collided and forced land upward, and that created the Himalayan mountains. And again, the Himalayan mountains are the tallest mountains in the world, and they contain the two tallest peaks in the world. The Himalayan mountains are home to Mount Everest, which is about 29,000 feet tall, and K2, which is about 28,000 feet tall. Right, so you can see in the picture below how these mountains really characterize the landscape here. You have a couple of important rivers on the Indian subcontinent. First, we have the Ganges River, which originates in the north in the Himalayan mountains, and it flows downhill through India, and it exits into the Bay of Bengal through Bangladesh. And the Ganges River gets quite wide and quite voluminous because it actually flows together with several other rivers, and it exits into the Bay of Bengal by way of a delta. So very, very similar to the Nile, the Ganges River creates a delta, which is a triangular-shaped place where a river meets a larger body of water. And that delta is a very, very important region to the Indian subcontinent because not only does it have a very low elevation, but it is very fertile because it has that Ganges River flowing through it. You also have the Indus River. The Indus River also originates near the Himalayan mountains, and it flows downhill north, actually, towards Pakistan and then south towards the Arabian Sea. Right? And the Indus River is a very important river to the Indian subcontinent because around the Indus River is the Indus River Valley. And with this satellite image, we can see the deserts on both sides of the Indus River, but we can also see the large fertile region of the Indus River Valley as it joins with the Arabian Sea. And the Indus River Valley is a very important river valley because it's where many early civilizations on the Indian subcontinent first developed. You're going to see the same old trend here. Early civilizations like to develop in fertile river valleys because it's easy to live there and easy to farm. In East Asia, we have quite a few landforms as well. First one we're going to talk about is the Tibetan Plateau, or the Plateau of Tibet. It characterizes much of East Asia, most of China, the western portions of China, and it kind of connects it abuts the Himalayan mountains. And it's a very, very large plateau, and on the plateau are a series of deserts and other mountains and other physical features. And it is so large, it actually covers an area the size of France or Texas. And it is so highly elevated that it is known as the roof of the world. So while it is not quite as high as the Himalayan mountains, it still extends. It still has quite a high elevation and characterizes the area. We also have the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert covers much of the northern parts of China and the southern parts of Mongolia. It's a very, very large desert, but it's mostly made of rock and gravel. And since this region has a high latitude and a rather high elevation, the Gobi Desert is still very, very dry, but it is also very cold. Not all deserts are hot. The Gobi Desert actually gets to around -40 degrees at some points throughout the year. So it's a very dry place, but it's also a very cold place. Just east of the Gobi Desert, we have the North China Plain. Now, this name is rather confusing because it's not located in the very, very northern regions of China. It does not border the Korean Peninsula. It's also not located in the very, very southern regions of China. It's kind of right smack dab in the middle. But the North China Plain is a series of very, very low and fertile river valleys. It's where most of the people of China live. And China is the most populous country in the world, and most of that population lives in the North China Plain. It contains some of the largest cities in China and also some of the most productive farmlands. There are several major rivers in China, the first being the Huanghe. The Huanghe is also known as the Yellow River. It's one of the longest rivers in China. And it's to the north. It does flow through the northern China Plain, and it originates in the plateau of Tibet. Kind of winds through China, but it's called the Yellow River because it actually does have a yellow tint to it. And that yellow tint is created by loess soil. So the reason why the Yellow River is so important is because, very similar to the Nile, the Yellow River actually floods. And as it floods, it deposits loess soil along its banks, creating a very, very fertile region once the waters contract again. All right, so that's the Yellow River. All right, we also have the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River is a major river in China, and it's also one of the longest rivers in China. And it's significant because it is so wide. Right? The Yangtze River is wide enough to fit cruise ships in it, so it becomes a major trade route, and it also flows through the North China Plain. Further east than China, we have two important physical features that also contain countries. Right off of China and also bordering Russia a little bit, we have the Korean Peninsula. The Korean Peninsula is very mountainous, very rocky, but along the coast of the Yellow Sea, it does get a little bit more plain-like. So the Korean Peninsula is a peninsula again because it's surrounded on four sides by water. Just east of the Korean Peninsula, three sides by water. Just east of the Korean Peninsula, east of the Sea of Japan, you have the Japanese archipelago. And it's a very small archipelago. It's only made of 4 islands. But these islands are also very mountainous. On these islands, you have very, very high mountains like Mount Fuji, but you also have volcanoes. So Japan not only is a very rocky country, but it's home to several volcanoes as well. And last but not least, we have the region of Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a very aquatic region because it's made of a series of peninsulas and archipelagos. The main peninsula that we're going to be discussing is the Indochina Peninsula. The Indochina Peninsula stretches off of the country of China, and it's home to the countries of Vietnam and Laos and Thailand. Off of the Indochina Peninsula is another smaller peninsula where you see my mouse right now, the Malaysian Peninsula or the Malay Peninsula. On the Malay Peninsula is the country of Malaysia. And just south of the Malay and Indochina Peninsula is the Malay Archipelago. Malay Archipelago is one of the largest archipelagos in the world, and it dots between the Malay Peninsula and Australia. It's made of almost 20,000 islands. Remember, an archipelago is just a very large group of islands. And around these islands and around these peninsulas are a series of seas and a series of oceans. But this region is also located on the Ring of Fire. Remember, the Ring of Fire is the area around the Pacific Ocean where lots of volcanoes and earthquakes are common due to very active plate borders. All right, so because this region sits on the Ring of Fire and because this region has a lot of water features, it is prone to certain natural disasters. All right, so that's what we have for the physical features of Southeast Asia, East Asia, and the Indian subcontinent.